So officially start this session today. I really would like to welcome everyone for coming in. I know there will be some Landcare Victoria members and non-members in this session. We usually do this for members, but I understand there will be a few of you that are not familiar with Landcare Victoria. So Landcare Victoria is the peak body for Landcare in Victoria, and we have around 600 member groups, and we support them through these webinars, through governance, support, insurance, auspicing arrangements, and a lot of other things. My email is also always full of interesting questions. So my name is Ana Pimenta, and I'm the development coordinator of Landcare Victoria. We're here today to deliver a webinar in partnership with the Container Deposit Scheme. It's something that has been of high interest of everyone. I'm sure you all seen the collecting some advertising out there. But before I start, let's start by acknowledging our country. So I'd like to acknowledge the lands on where I work today, the custodians of the various lands on which you are and I am today, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this webinar in particular, for me, the Gunai people, the traditional custodians of my land here. Landcare Victoria also takes inspiration from the legacy of Victorian Aboriginal people who have produced food while caring for the ecological systems that life depends upon for tens of thousands of years. Welcome everyone again. Today at our webinar, you obviously have myself facilitating, but our key speakers will be Clancy Wright from the Container Deposit Victoria. We also have Preeti Bandari, I hope I pronounced that right, Preeti, answering some questions in the chat, and we're going to have a case study, one of our member groups, Lisa Field from the Werribee River Association. So I will ask that because there are quite a few people, or potentially there will be a few people in this webinar, that you do not unmute yourself, and that you pop all the questions in the chat box. So the chat box, for anyone that is not familiar with Zoom, you can find the chat box on the bottom of your screen and just put any questions you might have in there. We will get to them at the end of this session. It's not going to be a very long session, so it'll be probably around 30 minutes. We'll get to them at the end. So Clancy Wright is the Community and Partnership Senior Manager for the Container Deposit Scheme in Victoria. Clancy is passionate advocate for community empowerment and environmental sustainability, and brings a wealth of experiences from across Australia and abroad. He is delighted to be able to facilitate both of these passions through the Container Deposit Scheme and through his work with the Victorian Environment, Sport, Education, local government and multicultural organisations. So time to hand it over to you, Clancy, and thanks for coming.
Yeah. Thank you, Anna, and hi to everyone on the call. My name is Clancy Wright. I'm the Communities and Partnerships Senior Manager at CDS Vic. I'm joined today by my colleague Preeti. Really delighted to be here and have the opportunity to talk with you all. I think it's a real joy for Preeti and I, since we've started working at CDS Vic, is been to work with a whole range of environmental groups across Victoria, both statewide and local groups. You're really happy to be here and have the chance to talk about the CDS in more detail, have a talk about its environmental impacts, and talk about how groups can use it for fundraising. I should just add, I'll jump into the deck in a moment. There's a bit to get through, but I should just add for those that would like to, Preeti and I are totally available should people like to discuss this information in more detail, particularly how that pertains to your local groups or your organisations. If you would like us or CDS Vic to present or talk to your groups, or your broader communities, we're really happy for you to send through those requests. I think Preeti will pop an email address in the chat, which you're very welcome to use and to share. We're very happy to receive any kind of requests through that channel and to keep this work going on. So I will jump into it. We will have some time for Q&As later. So I might go through the deck in its entirety, and we can chat through some of the specific questions you may have later. So the scheme itself is fundamentally an environmental program that seeks to reduce waste, rubbish or landfill by increasing recycling. And it does that through a circular economy model that incentivizes recycling with a 10-cent refund. Since the program started at the start of November last year, it's not very long, we've been around 3.5 months, over 200 million containers have been returned. That's increasing by about 20 million a week, would you believe, which we think is a really terrific start. The scheme itself is still scaling up, both in terms of its awareness and its participation, but also in terms of its structure and its functionality. So we will have more return points. I'll talk about those in more detail soon, but we will have more return points up around August. We'll still have a growth of about 30% of places where you can take your containers. But 200 million plus containers to start with. In terms of its environmental impact, that's calculated around the difference, I suppose, between building new containers and recycling containers through the 200 million plus. So from that number, the savings we've achieved or our sustainability contribution so far has been around over 1,100 million litres saved. For the swimmers in the room, that's about 470 Olympic swimming pools. In terms of landfill, equally as large, 12 million kilograms of landfill avoided. The energy savings from the recycling production as compared to new creation of containers is really substantial. It's around the average energy consumption of over 2,100 households, or in terms of carbon emissions avoided, around 9,000 cars off the road for a year. So we think that's a really terrific place to start. The numbers here are, of course, estimations. That data is still building, but we believe it'll be more or less something to this effect. But we think it's a terrific start, and that these numbers are a base point that we will continue to grow from. The scheme in Victoria runs slightly differently to the other states and jurisdictions in Australia. If you are familiar with those, Victoria has 3 commercial entities that deliver the program. They are spread across 3 zones in Victoria. In the east of Victoria, there is Return It. In the north, there is Visy, and in the west, there is Tomra Cleanaway. We oversee the program. They deliver the program on the ground. They are relevant both in terms of should you wish to connect with your operator, it's important to know whom they are, but also when we talk about fundraising, it becomes relevant as well when you activate your donation partner ID. That term will make more sense in a second. What can be returned and where you can return them is available on our website, which is cdsvic.org.au. Everything we're basically talking through today is available on the website cdsvic.org.au. I'll probably say that another half dozen times in the next 10 minutes. But what's eligible is, as a base rule, it is containers between 150 ml to 3 litres that are made from aluminium, glass, plastic, steel, not a lot of those, of course, and liquid paperboard. If you are in doubt, the 10-cent mark on the container is a very good point of reference. That will mean it is eligible. For those that are participating in cleanup activities, and I know there are lots of organisations probably on the call or groups on the call today that do participate in that, it's important to note that the barcode on the container is really important. So even if the container is eligible, there's no barcode, it can't be returned because the barcode itself needs to be scanned for that container to be recognised. So that's true if the container has, if the cover on the container, lack of a better term, has come off, or they have been so compacted that the barcode can't be scanned, they are most likely not going to be able to be returned. The other point where you can find them, as I said, cdsvic.org.au, there is a map that you can search for. You can also search for return points on Google Maps, but word of caution, if you put in CDS Vic on Google Maps, it will also come up with where you can buy CDs in Victoria. Not so helpful for return points, but if you are looking for a CD, who buys CDs, but you can, they do come up as well. That is the scheme in about as succinctly as I can do. What we really want to talk about today, and I know what lots of organisations would like to have joined today to hear about, is about fundraising with the CDS Vic. So we're really excited to talk through it. We're really excited to have to hear your questions about it afterwards as well. We're really conscious that for many groups, what we're talking about now, fundraising through the CDS Vic is new. I mean, it's new for everyone in Victoria because it's only been around for 3.5 months, but it's a slightly different way of fundraising. It's not the same as other conventional historical forms of fundraising. One of the great benefits of it is that people don't have to part with their money. They're just parting with otherwise their rubbish, which is a wonderful way of gaining funds. So I know most people have registered already, but I'll talk through it very quickly. If you haven't registered to participate as an organisation with the scheme, it's a fairly simple two-step process. The first place to go to is our website, cdsvic.org.au, and to register as a donation partner. That term donation partner, I'm conscious there's always a lot of new jargon with a new scheme, but it just refers to organisations that have registered to fundraise through the CDS. You go to our website, there is some step forms to complete. If you are not a registered charity, and I know lots of local groups will not be, that's not a problem, that's not prohibitive. Most or basically all local environmental groups will be eligible. You just need to complete a statutory declaration. They are downloadable on the form on the website, and you just need to complete that, have that cited, and return it or upload it. Once you have done that, you will receive an email with the steps to activate your donation partner ID. What does that mean? That is the number that every donation partner receives, and that's so members of the general public can transfer their refund to you either on the app or at a point of return. And when I say point of return, I mean all the different places you can take your eligible containers. So I'm going to talk about some case studies before Lisa shares her wonderful experiences with us as well. One of the things I really want to just flag, I suppose, or just raise before we talk about the fundraising is that the conversations we're having with groups that have already been active in the scheme is that, yes, they are raising funds, and that varies considerably from very little to some really substantial and strong contributions per month. But all of them are reporting that one of the wonderful components of fundraising through the CDS Vic is that it's changing the way and improving and growing the way they're interacting with their communities. So they're finding a really great increase in the awareness of their organisation and their activities. Lots of organisations are reporting recruitment of new volunteers, new participants, new players, new supporters to their cause. They're building new and stronger community relationships, sometimes with businesses, sometimes with schools, sometimes with clubs. And all the groups, regardless of their type or where they're located in Victoria or why they register to participate in the CDS, even if it's purely just about money, they all are contributing positively to improving the recycling behaviours in Victoria, and that's a really wonderful outcome. So let me tell some of these stories very quickly. So all these stories are organisations that are participating in the scheme. We have just changed their names and de-identified them. Recycling for Wales is the first. Recycling for Wales is the first group that we want to talk through. They are a statewide cleanup group, and they wanted to raise some funds for new equipment. They also, considering they're already collecting containers, wanted to embed the practice of returning containers. So their first step was to register at our website, cdsvic.org.au, as a donation partner. They got their email and they actually registered with all three of the network operators across the 3 east, north and west zones. And they did that because they have local groups right across the state that are doing cleanup activities. Their next step was to educate. They're very diverse, very spread out volunteers around why they would like them to collect containers, what are eligible containers, how do they return them, where do they return them, and why the actions were being asked and what they were doing. So that was quite successful. And the next step then for the volunteers was, as they were doing per regular cleanup activities, and this was spread out over about a 6-week period, when they were doing cleanup activities, they were separating their eligible containers from their other containers, doing their normal processes with the waste, the rubbish that they had collected, and the recyclable products, and then taking the eligible containers once they'd done enough. Sometimes it was a couple of cleanups. They would take them, return them, and use the Recycling for Wales donation partner ID to transfer the refund to Recycling for Wales. So over about a 6-week period, they collected 3,400 eligible containers across the state. That was $340, which was a great start for them. They were able to purchase some new equipment and clearly started to establish the practice of returning the containers that have been collected, and clearly still contributing to removing rubbish from the oceans. Their next steps about improving their website and building some new resources for kids were what their next goal was. And to work towards that, they were going to expand, and we'll talk a little bit about this in the next one, expand their activities from just their immediate, already established volunteers to asking their volunteers to encourage their friends and their families to collect their containers at home, and when they would return those containers, to deposit them deposit the refund, donate the refund to Recycling for Wales. So that is one example of how groups have been using it. This example is one we really love as well. It's from a terrific little primary school in the west of Victoria, which is the Tomra Cleanaway West Zone. They wanted to raise funds for excursions for their kids. The school staff registered the school to participate. They started to spread the word to their kids about collecting their containers at home and encouraging their families and friends to do the same. And through that kind of, concentric circle approach, their students started talking to their families, and their families started talking to others. And through that, they made some partnerships, one of which was with a local caravan park. They're a coastal community. The caravan park, in partnership with the school, parked a trailer, as simple as that, at the caravan park over summer, over the month of January, and asked all their guests to put their eligible containers into the trailer, and through 1 month raised $3,600 through 36,000 containers. So clearly it was probably a pretty fun caravan park for the month of January. Preeti and I, informed by the work that we've done with a whole range of groups, thought about what else could this Daisy Primary School do to increase their fundraising. And 3 of the steps that we thought they could take without a lot of effort would be to expand their reach with local businesses. So beyond just the caravan park, they could talk with pubs, cafes, restaurants, other businesses that might be supportive to the school, particularly in a small community, that want to or have a high number of eligible containers at their business, to put them aside, let volunteers come and collect them, or when they take them to a refund point, donate them to the school. We thought they could also team up with a local environmental group to run cleanup activities, given the kids' interest in biodiversity and sustainability. And they could also reach out to their local council and ask the council for collaboration, seek to promote the school's activities as well. The idea here and the concentric circle map is to encourage organisations to think beyond their immediate volunteers and members. The impact of a CDS fundraising campaign is at its greatest when you see a greater degree of mobilisation, particularly across a community. This next example is a continuation of that. Local footy club, regional footy club, wanted to or had to rebrand their logo. That was going to cost them $14,000 to update all their kit. That was $14,000 they frankly didn't have. So their first step was to fundraise the CDS Vic. They went to our website, cdsvic.org.au, registered as a donation partner. They are in the east of Victoria, which is the Return It zone. So they activated their donation partner ID with Return It. And the way they went about it was first just to buy some bins and put them at the footy oval and ask people, particularly their players and volunteers, to bring all their containers from home and put them at the bins, which is what happened. And Regional Football Club, they did reasonably well, collecting containers pretty quickly, but they realised they weren't going to reach the 140,000 containers that they needed to fund the new gear. So what did they do? Similar approach. They reached out into their community and built new relationships and strengthened existing relationships with community groups, with local businesses, with residents groups. They really pushed their container collection campaign through social media, through their newsletters, through email, really encouraged the word of mouth spreading of the news, particularly in a, albeit slightly larger, but regional community. And they got into the local newspaper, pushed that quite a lot, and developed a whole range of new connections. One of those, or some of those that I think is amazing, considering the nature of sport, was that they were able to actually partner with other sporting clubs to put bins on their premises and get the containers that were being consumed at those places actually donated to the footy club as well. So like the other stories, they've raised some really strong amounts of money in only 3 months' time. They're over a third of the way. They're at $5,000. But when we spoke to them, it was really clear to us, and really they made it really clear to us, I should say, that what they really took out of the activities and what they really valued was that their role in the community had grown substantially because of it. They had seen a strengthening of their relationships. Their leadership role in the community had grown substantially. And they were really, I suppose, proud of that. And that was something they were really hoping would translate, and are expecting it to translate into participation and attendance numbers as well when the season starts in the not too distant future. That is the case studies. I'm just about out of time before I want to throw to Lisa to talk through her experiences as well. But we have a whole range of resources that you're all invited and very much encouraged to use. They are downloadable and customizable. They're really easy to use. We have a fundraising guide plus posters and flyers, newsletter templates that people can use. This deck will be distributed later. People can scan the QR code to download them, or Preeti will just pop the link, or may have already just popped the link into the chat, and you are very welcome to use that and share that as much as you would like. And to that extent as well, we also have some translated assets. We can and are looking to produce more. If there are specific needs that you have, please do reach out. We're very happy to try to accommodate that as best we can. We also have some contact details and information for the 3 zone operators here. As I mentioned, that's my deck. I'll throw to Lisa in a second, but as I mentioned, if people would like us to come in and talk about these things to your groups, we're really happy to explore those options. If there's specific questions you have, I'm really happy to chat through them in just a moment as well. Lisa, I will stop sharing and you can take it away.
Well, thank you, Clancy. That was a great presentation. And again, please feel free to pop your questions in the chat. We will get to them. I think we all got quite a few great ideas there. Definitely a great program where you can achieve 2 goals, you know, with the environment, and also by increasing your donations. Landcare Victoria is also a part of the, is also registered in the 3 regions. So if you don't have anyone to give money to, give to Landcare Victoria. No, but we just really want our groups to do really well with this program. And I actually do think that it is more suited to smaller organizations than the larger ones. There's more impact, I reckon. So this is now time to hand over to Lisa Field. So Lisa is the Community and Business Development Manager at the Werribee River Association. Werribee River Association is a really strong group that Landcare Victoria has as a member. They've been invited to speak at other occasions. She volunteers to lead the local cleanup group called Lava Street 3030 Werribee. The environmental activism has included campaigning for the Container Deposit Scheme. They actually started this before us, before Landcare Victoria, against single-use plastics and amenity solutions to local leader issues. Lisa has done a bit of fundraising in her time, including for the local hospital, and is hoping to grow a passion to fundraise using the CDS, or the Container Deposit Scheme, for the Werribee River Association. Up to you now, Lisa, and thanks so much for donating your time to be here today.
Super. Thanks, Anna. Yes, it is great to be here and talk a little bit about the Werribee River Association and some of the work we've done, and our links to the Container Deposit Scheme. Just a little bit about me. I am formerly a community development worker, and but you know, I sort of ended up in the environmental space a little bit because of all the concerns around climate change, and then, you know, the whole war on waste and the tsunami of single-use items, etc. So I've gravitated into this sort of role with a community environmental organisation, and, you know, it's my privilege to sort of be able to be working with something that I'm quite passionate about. So yeah, the Werribee River Association's been around since 1981. We've got that whole catchment approach to the waterways, and very much involved in healthy communities and healthy waterways, and have responded to all sorts of concerns across those decades, out of which, you know, litter has been a bit of a constant. But yeah, also the tree planting, and now urban heat island effect, and protecting the platypus, and you name it. So, but we've definitely been on this journey to respond to environmental concerns, and we do that with the community, as this picture shows. This was an event, an advocacy piece that we ran down in sort of the main street of Werribee about 2018 at a guess. And we had this big bottle there provided by Boomerang Australia from memory. I should also acknowledge that I'm on the traditional lands of the Wadawurrung country, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So yeah, we've, as an association and also myself included, been involved in a lot of the advocacy work for the Container Deposit Scheme. Journey, particularly like Beach Patrol Australia, Boomerang, a lot. Some research around how much litter was in the Werribee River. Then each and every kind of been counting how many bottles and cans and how many various types of items, which when I started that litter group in 2018 as a volunteer, that was before I started working professionally with the association, I didn't really like the idea of counting all the bottles and cans and all that sort of stuff. I just wanted to get out there and make some impact and pick up the litter. But in fact, it's some of those data, having all that data on hand has been really, really useful for the campaign for the Container Deposit Scheme. So this photo is actually an event which is a big partnership piece with Beach Patrol Australia, where all the different groups around the bay and inland, the Love Our Street groups, get together for a spring clean in the city event. So that's a massive pile of CDS eligible containers that didn't get their money, unfortunately. Just a little bit about the community groups that I'm involved in. So I have my group, the Love Our Streets 3030 Werribee, but I've been able to help activate several other groups. When I started, there was already the Beach Patrol 3030 group, but across that period of time, I was able to help find some other leaders to start a group out in Wyndham Vale, one in Hoppers, and Point Cook also sort of grew up. So I think there's 5 groups now that the Werribee River Association does a little bit of sort of a bit of co-parenting with and helping them out and supporting the volunteer leaders, because, that sort of volunteer coordination is really important. Yeah, and we definitely use the Litter Stopper app to record all our data, and that gets fed up to the government department, DECA, formerly DELP. It's amazing how much litter does end up in the waterways, and I probably have a story about every form of litter there is. Whether it be cigarette butts, polystyrene, single-use plastics, and all the cans and bottles. It's amazing. Sometimes we score a really big load, and some of our inner city friends are quite surprised with how much we actually do pick up on our cleanups. There's quite a lot of litter out in the outer western suburbs. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is really had a lot of passion, we've got a lot of community arms and legs when it comes to supporting the removal of litter from the environment. And, we want to protect what we've got. And for those who haven't sort of walked or stomped around the Werribee River environment, it is actually a really beautiful space. A lot of work has happened. I'm probably not speaking of every part of the 110 kilometres of the river, but I'm particularly from Werribee, and it is an absolutely beautiful space, so worth protecting. So naturally, I saw the opportunities for engagement. I didn't think this was high volume money for the fundraising. I thought this was high engagement. And I know with having that high engagement sort of piece is really good, because that can sort of funnel more volunteers, more members, more supporters, there can be a ripple effect of all the different benefits that might arise by me promoting the opportunities for anyone to get out there and donate their cans, bottles, or eligible containers to the Werribee River Association. So I was pretty early onto it, registering with the program, and then I've just gone about things in that sort of ordinary way of letting everyone know, letting the board know, letting our local leaders know, letting our members know, incorporating the information into every newsletter campaign I'm sending out. And then I wrote a story for the local paper, and they wrote that in the local paper. And yeah, hoping that having the conversation when I'm actually down, putting the bottles in the machine, telling the milk bar people. And essentially one of the things I did too, as per most things, is just test it out. you know, I could read the instructions online that the government people have written very nicely and kindly, but like anyone else, I'm still needing a bit of a translation. So definitely just testing out and seeing what the difference is between taking it to the local milk bar versus taking it down to the reverse vending machine, etc. So that's my journey. And yeah, again, I'm just telling everyone, even when I'm down there, I'm telling these people that they're there actually, they're making their own money today, but that's okay. But, you know, they might tell other people. So that's what we've just been trying to do, get that word out strong and clear that we would love people to help us. And one good little story that happened today is in talking with a private developer, he asked about, you know, he'd spoken to one of the local litter leaders who then who rang me and said get in touch with him. And basically he's trying to get a reverse vending machine at his beachside community, and he would then also help get signage to say donate to the Werribee River Association. So back to what Clancy's saying is those relationships are great, and if they can leverage more relationships like that, that would be a great result. There's also other clubs and societies that are willing for us to, you know, put extra bins in there to collect the bottles and cans. And I'm just in that process of working out, have I got the, you know, the people power to go in and collect those and then take them down to the machines for the donation. So there's a little bit of work to work out. But I'm keeping an open mind, and I think a bit like what Clancy's saying is if I can promote the cause of how this money will be used, it will be used to plant trees, protect the platypus, and support all our volunteer-led programs, then people will, you know, align their small donations with a worthy cause. To date, our donation may be under 200, but, you know, it's probably about 45 contributors. So I'm still feeling that there is some benefit in having that high engagement and growing the supporter base is really, it just aligns with everything we're doing at the Werribee River Association. So yeah, I'm just asking people to just do it. I put out these communications across all those 5 litter groups and the Werribee River Association. There is, you know, an email campaign for each and a Facebook page for each. So I'm just trying to pump it as much as I can. Just keep the message and the stories there, mix it up. Some of it will look like from the government promotions, and some of it will be my own little photos that I've taken when I'm out and about. And just to reiterate, you know, the Werribee River Association has been around since 1981. We started by those concerned citizens for the waterways. It was a time when there was considerable degradation. We didn't have a water manager. You know, lots of denuded lands around the waterways. And well, after being a volunteer-driven organisation for many decades, we're now a small professional agency with a handful of part-time staff and hundreds of volunteers. We're very community-driven, and so I think we're pretty worthy of some of those donations. And yeah, there's lots of opportunities for people to get involved, even if it's just donating their, you know, half a dozen cans to the program via the CDS vending machines. So that's about me and the Werribee River Association. Thanks for listening.
Well, thank you, Lisa. I actually lost part of your presentation because my computer decided to restart. I thought I had lost you all, but now you're all here. So that, anyway, I've never happened before. Good to know that actually you're all still there, but I did miss some of your presentation, and I'm missing some of the questions in the chat. So, but I know that I can see that Clancy, that maybe Pretty or Clancy have been answering some of them. There were some good ones there before I left. So I'm not sure, Pretty, do you want to step in and maybe answer some of the couple of questions that were there before I left? I just don't have them. Yeah.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, really happy to. So really happy to take lots of questions for anyone that has one. I might just address some of the questions that are in the chat now. So there was a request around the reverse vending machines. And if people aren't familiar with that term, reverse vending machines are the big machines where you put your containers in, and they're often in car parks, or they're in high traffic areas. In regional areas, they'll be located in slightly different places as well, but they are often the kind of desired point. If you have large amounts of containers, I should just say they normally are best taken to a depot where there's greater capacity, where you can put them all into a machine rather than hand feeding them one by one. But there was a question around charities that appear or are displayed on the RVMs. How do you become a promoted charity? Was there a question? Frankly, it is a good position to be in around donations. Most donations are at the point of return rather than people using the app. That is a question for your zone operator or your network operator. They manage the machines in their areas, and that is a conversation to put to them, or a request to put to them. So in our pack, which there was a question about, will it be emailed out? Yes, I believe that's right, isn't it, Anna? The pack will be, the deck will be emailed to attendees of the session today. Oh, you're on mute, I think, Anna.
So I will send the presentation and link to the video recording to everyone that is being registered, and it will also be available in our website, and also in your website, I believe, too. Fancy?
Yeah.
The CDS website. Yeah, so we will, and yeah, copy of the presentation in a PDF.
And so there are some contact points for the zone or network operators in that deck as well. You can also just look them up, but there's certainly some there on the in the deck. The question from Helen and Lance, I think Preeti has already replied, but yes, feel free to send us an email. We're happy to explore that as well. If that's an issue with the donation part registration process, really happy to look at it for you. Steve, as well, there's a question there for everybody that is around, how do you identify your donors who have transferred their donation of their returns to your organisation? It's a really good question, and at the moment, or it's probably unlikely that will be a feature of CDS FIC. You do not have to register with the CDS FIC to use it, so you will not be able to have detailed information about everybody that has donated to you simply because of that, and we don't share that information. There are some privacy concerns, but so it functions slightly differently. And I suppose when I was introducing the fundraising piece, the CDS FIC fundraising model is slightly different to existing fundraising channels, and that is one of the challenges. So it's a piece that some organisations have had to reflect on, and how do they manage that piece, and how do they see who's raising all the funds for them. At the moment, there isn't ID that comes with those transfers. The question from Amanda around, can you drop off bulk containers directly at Visy, which I imagine is your zone or network operator, without loading cans individually into reverse vending machines? Yes, absolutely. At every zone across the scheme, the depots are there to receive large scale returns, and they are the best place to take bulk container drop-offs. So you can find those on our website, cdsvic.org.au. If only I had $1 every time I said it, but that's the best place to find where your closest depot is. I'm just going through.
There's a question here.
Yes,
so
please.
if you need to have the lids on or off, and I believe you can have the lids on, they're right. So there's another question here. We have discussed with the local recreation reserve committee and with a rep from the Golden Plains Shire, with the assumption that a machine could be installed at at the creek as north. Yeah. So is it feasible? The question will be if it's feasible to install a machine, or should they go to Cleanaway with a proposal to cover the costs? Who's responsible for the installation?
Yeah, so really good question. And I guess lots of the questions that we have in these sessions are normally about operational aspects of the program, and they are all for your zone or network operator. So yes, as you are in Golden Plains Shire, that is Tomra Cleanaway. Absolutely, yeah, you're very welcome to have that conversation with them. In some zones, there are other ways to look at how you might solve that problem as well, whether it's an RVM or whether there might be another solution. It's a good topic or a good conversation to have with your operator.
So another thanks for your question. And another one here is, if you don't have a mobile phone, can you access the group's registration? How can you access the group's registration code? Well, how can you actually donate without having a mobile phone? Is that a possibility?
Yes, it is. So most places where you take your containers, and I have to say most, because there are slight variations across the scheme, across the 3 zones, but most RVMs that you go to, you could look up if you had the number. You would have to have the number of the organisation, or at least the name of the organisation you want to donate to, and you can normally look them up. It does vary. The next question from Viet is about OTCs. Again, it slightly vary, but depending on where you return them, how would you do the donation? If you had the number and the name, you would be able to donate to them at most points of return. Forget your question around the OTC. There is some variation at OTCs, but yes, you should be able to donate with the donation ID and the name of the organisation at an OTC. And for those who aren't familiar with that term, OTCs, Lisa referred to it as when you take them to the milk bar or the kind of shop around the corner. There are different types of return points in Victoria. The RVMs we've discussed, the depots, the really big ones, and the OTCs refer to or stand for over the counter. They are generally and typically small businesses in your area, and they often deal with small quantities of containers, so not a place to take hundreds of containers. You can find them again on your on looking on the interactive map.
So following on that one, actually, Clancy, so if you are going over an OTC, so apparently someone insisted that they would give you cash instead of enabling a donation charity. Is this legal? Is this correct? Do you know what could be happening here?
Yeah, look, I think the proposal there from Jane is a really appropriate next step, is to take it up with your operator. I think that's the appropriate next step.
Yeah, probably now the local depot only provides cash refunds. So same answer, I'd say. So that's the end of the questions. I can now probably, if you can either pop another question in the chat, or if you're feeling brave, you can unmute yourself or raise your hand and have a verbal question if you like. One thing that I've been, also there's one here from Viet, are there OTCs that operate similar to a depot but on a smaller scale, or are they all small businesses? I've seen RGA and BP fuel stations mostly.
Yeah, I mean, they all operate in a similar way, I suppose, in the nature of it, which is that the containers go in, a refund comes out. The OTCs are a smaller operation, much smaller operation than a depot. A depot is, in a sense, a kind of industrial scale. You can take a very large amount. You could take thousands upon thousands of containers to a depot, and that is the role they play. So when you take them in, if you nerd out on it like I do, you can see the containers go through and start to get separated. The OTC is a very different operation. They will generally take your containers in a bag or a box or whatever it may be, and maybe count them at the spot or give an estimation as to how many there are, and do the interaction and do the exchange at that, or the refund at that point.
And yeah, as Lisa mentioned in the chat, that we need to be flexible. So if you can only get cash, you can always donate via the organization's website if they allow you to.
Jane has her, is it Jane? Yes, has her hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Jane.
I'm just wondering, I know that the counter operator, so I've noticed that we, which is the Victorian National Parks Association, we have received donations via like an IGA in Glen Iris. In an over-the-counter situation, what is the technology, like when somebody has the barcode on their phone, what do they have? Does the checkout person have something, or do they have some technological device for scanning it, or do they manually put it into a website, or? Yeah,
look, it's a really good question, and some of the challenges of responding to specifics across the scheme is there is some variation. The best way, I think, to approach an OTC in terms of ensuring the donation takes place, and noting Lisa's comments in there. But if you in the chat, if you take the ID number with you and the name, it enables you to provide that to them so they can enter that in. If they're able to do that, then that will be the easiest way for the donation to take place. Lisa's comment, I suppose, was if you receive a physical return of that cash, you could always make a donation to the organisation through a different cash-based channel.
Yeah, I think just the two examples I've had of people getting a bit frustrated when they're just given cash. They think, oh, why bother? You know, they just sort of put it in their wallet and don't do the next step. But anyway, yeah, hopefully over time, as the scheme rolls out more, the over-the-counter operators will get more sophisticated with how they handle charitable donations.
And there was and yes, and thank you for your question, Jane. And the comment or the question in the chat from Monica, I think, is probably an extension of that, in the sense is, will there be more reverse vending machines? I know Preeti's responded to that already, but the scheme is continuing to roll out. So there will be roughly another 30% of return points, an expansion of around 30% of current return points by August, and that will also see a change in the makeup of those return points. So we will see more RVMs, reverse vending machines, rolling out, and we're likely to see a change in the makeup of the OTC proportion and locations of those as well.
Yeah, so we also have Michael, and we got another question, but we got Michael with a hands up. Michael, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, hello. Thank you for the webinar so far. It's been really insightful. I have two questions, actually. So the first one is around the bottles, because what we've noticed is that there's a lot of bottles that are in Victoria with the 10 cents on them. But I think based on the guidelines, if they're under 150 ml, for example, Yakults, why are they not eligible in the state of Victoria? I know that other states have them eligible. So that's my first question. And will that extend in the future? And secondly is more around the, I guess, maybe some advice maybe you have around the collection, and how do we approach, or how would one business approach extending it? Because I know a lot of business typically ask for, do you have bins? Do you have bin liners or things like that to help facilitate the process? Do you have guidelines or examples of how you would suggest someone would tackle that?
So the second point of your question, you're asking, when you're approaching a business around collection, how might you help them to facilitate the collection of the containers? Is that what you're talking about, Michael?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So the first question, really good question. There are obviously some differences. I can't speak for the different schemes around Australia, but there are obviously some containers that aren't eligible. That also includes wine bottles and spirit bottles are not eligible in the scheme. What is eligible and what is not will likely be something that is evolves over time across Australia. And I know there are some states, jurisdictions that are looking at expanding eligibility. I couldn't speak today specifically to why your cool isn't or smaller containers are, but I'm very happy to take that on notice and can come back to you with an answer for that question. In terms of how you approach businesses, I think it's a really pertinent question. And the answer probably isn't super straightforward. It varies, and a lot of the way in which the fundraising is being conducted across the scheme is really varying around what the circumstances that those businesses are in, how they are sorting their containers already, if the stock in their business is made up of primarily eligible containers or not. If, for example, all the containers are eligible, then all they need to be done is taken to a return point, presumably a depot. How that is done, that can vary from boxes to bins to trailers to whatever is working best, and the scale of that collection, I suppose. If there is a variation where many of the containers are not eligible and some are eligible, they will most likely need to be sorted. So taking large scales of non-eligible containers with eligible can be problematic and would be problematic. So finding a way to work through that would also impact how you collect those. So it varies, I suppose, and it's the best way to manage that. I would suggest is a conversation between the organisation that is looking to collect the containers and the prospective business that's involved. And most likely, given the eligibility that's currently in place, most likely pretty much all the containers would be eligible, but it's a conversation to probably have with the small business.
Okay, thank you very much. So can I ask one more question?
Sure.
If that's all right. I understand also from conversation that there could be skips or bin shortages in Victoria. Is that something that is correct in terms of donation organisations who want to start up a donation or collection of as part of the CDS? Is there a shortage of bins currently in Victoria, or is that something that is currently being worked through? Because I think this is something that I've heard verbatim through other conversations where there has been that indication.
So what the start of your question, sorry, Michael, was around, can people use skips or other things to collect the containers? Is that what?
No. So just I'll clarify. So what I understand was people who are looking at operating as part of the CDS for the container collection as a collection point. I've been hearing that there's been shortages of skips and bins available for these organisations to start up. Is that something that is a current issue for Victoria?
Look, I think we've probably heard similar anecdotal feedback, which is that some people are struggling at different times to find bins. I presume that is a product of a shift in what is clearly a change in the demand for additional bins. And what we're seeing is an increase in people wanting to have greater capacity to collect containers and new bins to support that. Obviously, in the case studies we featured, some of those had new bins, some of those had solutions like trailers. Lots of other case studies that we have been collecting, people are purchasing bins for that. So I think that there was at the start some challenges around the lag in purchasing those bins. I cannot speak now to all the challenges that might be there or the delays in purchasing bins. But it has been something that people have had to work through, but I imagine that will start to become easier to navigate.
Okay, thank you very much.
So I think we'll have another couple of questions, and we might stop our webinar so we can all have dinner. But this was an interesting one about why 3 different apps and not one app. So do you know why, Clancy, why it's been divided between regions and not one app?
Yeah, look, there are benefits and there are some slight challenges, I suppose, to having 3 commercial entities delivering the scheme across Victoria. One of those products, positive or challenging, is that there are 3 apps, one for each of the zones. It also, for Victoria, has some real benefits that other states and jurisdictions do not. But certainly, the reason why there are 3 apps rather than one is because we have 3 zones and 3 commercial entities delivering that. So one of the differences for us in Victoria is that if you are, like Landcare, a statewide a donation partner that has registered across the whole state, you do need to activate that with the 3 zones, and obviously your app can provide you with data and information around those different zones as well.
And anyone can actually do it, I believe. Like, yeah. So, so another one. I mean, there's been some questions about the bins being full, not emptied enough, not having enough bins. I guess, not having enough bins has been answered. That they want to put more bins out, not being emptied. Clancy, do you know what is the limitation there?
Yeah, look, so there are systems that are present for all RVMs in the state to alert the operators around them being full, and that is being managed as best as they can. I guess there has been some frustrations around RVMs being full. The network operators and the zone operators are working on that. I suppose there is still an element of the scheme still building to scale and still coming fully online in terms of the expansion of the system. So we are still only 3.5 months into Vic. The scale of the collection that's taking place, we're talking over around 20 million a week, or over 200 million, is really considerable. So in the short time that was present to scale up and to roll out the program, it's doing very well. It's not to say there haven't been some challenges, and emptying RVMs to ensure that people can take their containers to them is just one of those pieces.
All right. Just one last one. I've lost my question. Oh yeah, so in regards to the bins that will be installed, is there going to be a more focus on larger cities, towns than more regional remote locations, or how is that going to be decided?
In terms of return points?
Yes.
Yeah, look, I couldn't speak to how the 3 zone operators or where exactly they will place their new return points. But obviously, the idea of the scheme, the intention of the scheme, is to make it as accessible as possible. If the question is speaking to concerns, particularly around regional areas, the scheme is obviously trying and working to make sure that they are adequately serviced. And it's really worth noting, we've talked about fundraising a lot of the terrific fundraising stories we are receiving are coming through regional communities and regional areas, and I think there's real benefits to how the scheme interacts and supports regional areas, but obviously there will be a balance in those return points between regional and metro. I couldn't speak to exactly where they are because I frankly wouldn't be provided that information just yet.
Thanks, Clancy. I think we should finish on a good note. Julie is saying congratulations on the design of the system that is very reliable apart from the empty, but it's easy to use. And also this is a really positive one, beautiful, that we live in a rural location and we have noticed a dramatic drop of roadside rubbish since the system came in. And I can second that. Yeah, definitely it's been a great system for reducing rubbish. So I think we good to say goodbye. I just wanted to first thank Lisa Field. She's donated her time tonight for share her story around the container deposit scheme and how it worked for them, and also to obviously Clancy and Pretty for being here today and spending your time telling us all about the scheme. And to all of you for coming up. I also just wanted to say, there was a slide there, but we do, if you are a member of Landcare Victoria or not, there's a couple of more webinars coming up. One next Tuesday on a webinar on media basics, and the following week on the 5th of March, another webinar on media engagement. And we've got a few more coming up, but we don't have exact dates. You can check our website or our Facebook page for updates, but feel free to register for those ones as well. They are free. And we have really good speakers, and also some good case studies. All right, so thanks so much and hope you have a good night. Enjoy your dinner. Enjoy the rest of your night. And thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Anna.
Thanks, Clancy.
Thank you.